Rob and I are back from Seattle as the Blue Jays 1, 2, or 3 out there. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit. But also, the Blue Jays went 2 and 3 in San Francisco. Good vibes all around, except maybe not. Bo Bichette, we'll get into the comments right away that he talked to the San Francisco media about. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Let's get right into this thing.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Blue Jays Center.
Bautista drives it deep left field. Gone!
The sickest Toronto Blue Jays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Cole Whiston, Robin Tillemon. My name is James Price, and we are going to dive right into this thing. Cole's going to be here for about the first 15, 20 minutes. We'll rip the Stat Genius thing after we talk Bo Bichette. So let's get right into this puppy. But I mean, my goodness, boys. Berto, you and I were in Seattle. All right. Great vibes. Jays fans, electric.
Terrific.
Ripping Mariner fans left and right. I mean, you were. Let's be honest here. But anyways, let's not talk about that, okay? Because we got to get to the meat and potatoes of what's going on with the Toronto Blue Jays and Bo Bichette. Because we all heard the comments yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? Regardless, about someone asking him, what do you think of San Francisco? And he kind of made it about the ball club and winning and wanting to win somewhere. And okay, so I'm gonna sit back for a minute. Cole, I'll let you start us off, pal. What do you take from that, if anything? Do you dwell on that shit, or do you just sit back and kind of say, okay, do you not dwell on it?
For anybody that this comes as a surprise to, I think you don't understand the business of baseball because Bo Bichette has been with the team for, this is his 5th year now, coming on 6 years. So the Jays have obviously not succeeded at all in his tenure. Multiple playoff exits and no playoff wins to account for anything. Bo Bichette is going to get paid in a year and a half now. He's going to get paid, and it's going to be, north of $150 million, probably north of 200, and who knows how much more than that he's going to get paid. The Jays have never handed out a contract like that in their entire franchise history. So Bo Bichette is just making it abundantly clear this year from a body language standpoint, from a performance standpoint, and then from just a business side of baseball standpoint that he is interested in leaving the Toronto Blue Jays. Basically, I think that's what he was doing in that San Francisco media interview, was simply just announcing to different media outlets that I'm definitely open to free agency and I'm open to all teams, but I'm going to declare here that I'm looking for a winning team. Obviously, 9 times out of 10, if the winning team will pay you, then sure. But if there's a losing team that's going to pay you even more money, then the guy ends up usually going there. But for me, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. We've said it from the get-go that Bo Bichette was likely going to leave the Toronto Blue Jays. Even if they were managing to get into the playoffs and getting wins, he was probably going to leave the Blue Jays because it's just unprecedented for the Jays to hand out a contract like that. So the odds are not in our favor of re-signing a guy like that. So this shouldn't have come as a surprise. Don't look too much into it. I think the reason why it got the reaction it did is because of Bo Bichette's year. If Bo Bichette was having a great year, another great year, I don't think people would have really reacted as negatively to this as they have. But because Bo Bichette's been physically checked out from a body language standpoint, fans are obviously even a little bit more pissed that he's willing to not only interview with opposing media members, but is also willing to speak on the future of him being a Toronto Blue Jay. So that, I think, is the reaction. But don't be surprised if multiple players like Vladdy have these same comments who also had previous comments this season.
Yeah, I was going to point to the Vladdy one a few weeks ago about how all of a sudden he kind of slowly walked it back, his comments about the Yankees. Now you have Bo, essentially publicly flirting with the San Francisco Giants. I mean, that was just an example. My take is very similar to that. It's that Bo Bichette has, despite being awful this season, we can talk about how awful he's been, which is, to me, just insane. Like that we're here a week before the All-Star break, the week of the All-Star break, and Bo Bichette has an OPS beginning with a 5 and has a negative WAR and is having a worse season than Ernie Clement, who all of a sudden is good now. But anyways, like you mentioned there, I think Bo's just saying that, hey, I want to get paid. If you're not willing to pay me, I'll go and flirt with someone else who's willing to pay me. You're telling me it's a business, and I'll say it's a business right back at you. Someone's willing to pay me out there, and hey, Toronto Blue Jays, I'm putting it on media for you. If you're not going to pay me, somebody else will. So I don't have really a problem with that overall. Pretty much not a whole lot to add to what you said there. To me, it's more so not so much the comments itself, but just like the macro. Like, is this the reason why Bo Bichette is having the year he has? Is that he's just done with this
So
franchise?
I want to have that
I think that's
conversation.
the
So I
macro.
had it with
Yeah.
Tyler the other day off camera, and obviously it's not a matter of like he's purposely hitting below 600 OPS to get traded by the Toronto Blue Jays, because that does nothing for him. Having a bad year like this is just to spell it out for people. Having a bad year, a year and a half before your free agency, that's a ridiculous, a ridiculous idea. Obviously, nobody's doing that on purpose. But it might be a snowball effect where he can't get it going, and because he is not motivated by the team's success to get it going, it is snowballing to him not being able to at all ever get it going this year. That is possibly what's happening. And then on top of that, receiving the comments that he receives probably from, Blue Jays fans and Blue Jays media members, and the way he's been covered this year is something that he isn't used to, and probably something that is, honestly, emotionally, probably driving him further away. So I don't think, obviously, any of this is intentional. It's, I think, just a snowball effect.
Yeah, let me just be very clear before you get your take in there, Price. Like, by me saying that his environment is causing this, no way am I saying that Bo Bichette is actively going out there striking out, hoping that the Toronto Blue Jays lose games. Like, he obviously, like you mentioned, there's no benefit to him playing poorly, him intentionally playing poorly. No one has ever done that, unless you have a parlay on the other side. But we haven't. Hopefully, we don't see that going forward. But yeah, I think, like you mentioned, just that if you're just unhappy with your environment, if every day you're getting up and going to work at a regular job and you're just miserable, it's hard to have good performance if you're just not happy in your environment. So while Bo Bichette, I'm sure, is going out there and doing his best, perhaps that the bad, toxic perceived environment that he's in is just contributing to his lack of success at the plate. And if you look at the actual material issues this season, I mean, a lot of people will point to Bo Bichette. He swings at everything. He doesn't take pitches. That's why he's struggling. Like, that's not really the case. If you look at the actual numbers, the balls in the zone, it's been a lot higher than it has in the previous years. And not to mention the previous years, despite the fact that Bo Bichette chases a lot and has the plate coverage, swinging at balls at his shoe tops, outside of the zone, whatever, he had a lot of success doing it with his approach. He led the league in hits multiple years. He was a 5-win player across like 3 seasons before this year. So that's not the reason. The reason, for whatever reason, is that he's just going through the George Springer of he's just not hitting the ball hard anymore. And it's insane. At least with George Springer, you can kind of point to his age, his birthday. Whereas with Bo Bichette at 25, the fact that he's having this season is just really almost unprecedented, really. It's almost Cody Bellinger-esque of an MVP candidate. And obviously, Bo has never been that caliber of player, but to fall off and be almost unplayable, I mean, it's just insanely disheartening for him and the organization, because he was the guy coming into this season. We labeled him the team MVP. But anyway, what do you think, Pricey?
I'm going to flip it a little bit, boys. I'm going to go the other side of the coin where it kind of pisses me off.
Yeah.
I mean, look, is this a Toronto sports fan coming out of me? Sure. Where guys, when they show they want to be here, we'll love you to death. But the moment you think about, I don't want to be here anymore. Oh, we'll pack your bags for you. We'll send you packing. We'll get the flight going. We'll get on the tarmac for you and board you even if you want, right? But for me, I look at the Bo Bichette stuff and I'm thinking, okay, what is the slogan, fellas, of this team? To the core. To the core.
Oh,
Who is that core?
Yeah.
Well, Bo and Vlad.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So for this team, we talked about it before the year even started. How does this team succeed? Those two guys got to be your best players.
Yeah.
And if they're their best selves, maybe not 2021 Vlad, but like we said, 2022 Vlad, and Bo Bichette just being Bo Bichette of every other year, it's a sign that this team could do something this year.
Yeah.
Yep. Bo Bichette is nearing one of the worst qualified hitters in baseball right now.
Yep.
Like, I'm sorry, as much as all the team success, he's at the forefront of a lot of this.
You're part of the problem, buddy.
Succeeding.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with, and that's the other thing I want to point out. I don't think you're wrong for being pissed off at these comments. This certainly isn't supposed to make any Toronto Blue Jay fan happy. You shouldn't be, sitting there with a smile on your face looking at these comments. Bo Bichette not being a Toronto Blue Jay in 2 years is going to be, a problem. Like in all likelihood, we are not going to replace Bo Bichette, the player that he was for this entire team up until this year. We're not going to replace that player in all likelihood. So yeah, Jays fans should be pissed off. So your reaction is completely fair.
Yeah, I really don't like the way he's going about it.
Yeah.
The comments to Hayes, and I get it. Bo's a dude that's just going to tell you how it is. He's honest, and I get it. And I know people want honesty in sports, and sure, I understand that. When Hazel May talks about the possibility of being traded, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm open to it." It's like, okay, so
not only open, he wouldn't be surprised if he was.
Yeah, and I'm like, all right, well, okay, like that's great. And then and dude, literally talking to him about what do you think of San Francisco? Not about the organization. Not about the team, not about the history, nothing about the city of San Francisco.
Yeah.
And his response is about winning and culture about the franchise and that.
Did anybody tell him that San Fran's below 500 too? Did anybody tell him that?
I'm just trying to figure out how he's trying to make the Jays fans not pissed off with that comment because there was nothing about the team asked. And that's the part that's really frustrating to me is he made something out of nothing. He could have said it's a beautiful city, blah, 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 all that nonsense jargon. But he makes it about something that the question wasn't even asked about. So that's the part that gets to me is all the stuff I mentioned before. And then you add that. And it's like, what, am I supposed to go to the ballpark and cheer for him now when he doesn't even want to be here? Like, I'd rather, I don't want to, okay, this is all hypothetical. But I'd rather watch Leo Jimenez play right now. You know why? Yeah. His ass wants to be here. His ass wants to spot in the big leagues. And you're seeing it by his play since he's come up. Now, again, is it something that's going to last? Is he going to be Bo Bichette? Obviously not. But the kid wants to play. The kid wants to be here. I want to watch that. I don't want to watch a dude flailing and being like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to be gone here shortly anyways. Like, really? Like, no, I'm good. So
I'm good.
Well, I actually not because like here's the thing with Bo Bichette's poor performance, he's gotten to the point where he is untradeable. I mean, this is legitimately this is legitimately selling an asset at its lowest stock. I mean, at this point, the Blue Jays, there's no downside to keeping Bo Bichette anymore. You talk about the 2 playoff runs. The dude has an OPS of 590. I mean, at the radio station, that's OPS. I mean, this is insane. Like how bad of a season he's having to the point where if the Blue Jays decide to keep Bo Bichette, it's like, okay, well, why not? It can't get any worse than it's been so far. His value's only going to go up because the bar is just so low of how poorly he's performed. Like as you mentioned there, asking about, he could have just said, the Golden Gate Bridge is not bad.
Sure.
Alcaraz is pretty cool. Alcatraz is pretty cool, but he's just talked about the Giants and how good of a team they are, even though they're 3 games under 500. The message wasn't that he wants to be a Giant; it's that he just doesn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And look, honestly, as much as I didn't have a problem, and it's not like the Vladdy. After you talked about that, it's one thing if Vlad, who's openly said on camera, I want to be a Blue Jay the rest of my career, retire here, and having the year he's had, who's been by far and away their best hitter, no question about it, their best position player. And yet the team still is not willing to give him the extension that at this point, we've all agreed at this point that should be the pack. Go forward and pay Vlad, build around him. And the team still hasn't done that. I get why Vlad is walking back his comments and saying it's a business. Maybe I want to be elsewhere. Whereas now that you mentioned it, I think I have more time to think about it. I've kind of swayed a little bit on your side of, hey, Bo, we get it, but you're part of the problem, buddy. And he's definitely been part of the problem of why this team has underperformed to this level and why for 3 weeks up until the deadline, we're going to have nothing but constant shows about them selling and what prospects they'll get and whatever. Bo Bichette's the biggest reason why that's the case. Let's be honest.
Yeah, let me hammer right now that Vladdy and Bo will not be traded at the deadline.
It's not going to happen.
End quote. It's not happening. Okay, I'm almost going to say 100%. It's not happening for multiple reasons. Something that we have said ad nauseum about Ross Atkins not being allowed to make those type of deals because those are franchise-altering decisions. And if a dude who has 1 foot out the door, they'll be like, no, hold on, that's not happening right now. And people are gonna say, well, then fire Ross Atkins. Well, again, I've said it doesn't happen often mid-season. It's also not happening this year because the draft is in 3 freaking days. It's not happening 3 days before the draft. And they think, okay, well, what about after the draft? What, less than a month before trade deadline? Yeah, that's great.
Also, that would be awful strategy, letting the guy
It's a
make
horrible
the pick and then
strategy.
firing him right after the
Oh
pick is
God,
made.
it's a
It's just, yeah,
horrible
makes
strategy.
no sense.
Right. And then
Yeah.
you think about trade deadline. Well, they're not going to have some schmuck, even if it was James Clay, right? Make those trades less than a month after taking over. Well, what happens after that? Nothing. The off season happens after that. And that is when those things can start happening. So I think it's pretty mathematical
Also,
that none of that's going to happen.
one more point I want to make. Just that last point that you mentioned, like for all this, James Click talk. I mean, there's this idea that he's just sitting there
Yeah.
locked up in a dungeon, ready to,
I
the door's
mean-
ready to be open. He's going to come in and make all these changes. He is part of the front office that has came to building this team. I know he hasn't been here forever, but the last 2 years he was a part of this organization. He was a part of their strategy, and the last 2 years is what has pissed off fans the most about how this team, their trajectory has been
It's just the name
last 2 years.
the
So
name that's talked
yeah.
about, right?
So, yeah, congrats to James Click. He was a big part of the Astros World Series, their only legitimate one in 22. But it's not as if he's coming in here and changing things. I think that once Ross Atkins gets fired, not if, when he gets fired, they have to do an external search and bring in some new blood outside the organization, fresh. So
And that is
I just want to
probably
point that out there.
And that's probably why we heard the comments about the Jays, only trading rental guys at this deadline, because the organization doesn't want him making any of these big time moves, which is still weird that he's going to be making all these moves at the deadline, literally with 1 foot out the door. It's just very odd situation that we're in right now. But Cole, I know you got to get going at some point here, pal. So we're going to rip up your Stat Genius segment. You haven't told us what you're saying, so let's get to it.
Funny enough, it's actually a perfect segue. A perfect segue. It is literally on the topic that we were already having, discussing Ross Atkins making these kind of moves at the deadline. So we just said the only moves he plans on making at the deadline are expiring contracts, and James just made a good point in suggesting that that's because the Jays higher-ups don't want him making any more further moves with guys that are under control for 2025, especially when the philosophy is that they're going to compete in 2025. Now, while we, the three of us and anybody who listens to this, can disagree about whether or not competing in 2025 is a logical move or not, this number might actually make you feel a little bit better about the idea about competing in 2025. If you take all of the expiring contracts, the most notable names with the expiring contracts this year at this year's deadline, you trade all of them away, you're freeing up roughly $50 million. $50 million on the payroll. Now,
assuming it's the same budget, assuming it's
the same budget, and obviously it's not $50 million left. It's $50 million what they made in 2020, what they're going to make in 2024. But $50 million can certainly be reallocated into a team more proper for 2025 that will actually put a more competitive roster together and not have the likes of relying on Kevin Kiermaier to put up another 700 plus OPS season for the first time in 5 years or whatever it is. So that is, I think, a surprising number that I wasn't expecting when I looked into this, and it at least gives me some false hope that the free agent market might actually be good enough, and we might have enough money, be willing to spend that kind of money if we're trying to compete in 2025. So it's not much of a stat. It's more just like we actually do have a possible payroll budget available to compete in next year's free agent market.
It'd be very
interesting. Go ahead, buddy.
Well, it should be very interesting to see what Rogers allows to be used out of that money, right? Obviously, because they know that the contract situation with everybody else moving forward, how much are they willing to put into that 2025 team? That's that's the real question, right?
I think, but from my perspective, we wouldn't be hearing about competing in 2025 if Rogers hadn't already sent that down the wire, like had agreed to putting up a similar budget to what they've put up this year in terms of competing in 2025.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, they're going to compete next year, because even with the $50 million you mentioned there, and even if the payroll is slightly shrunken, this is still going to be the payroll of a team that's expected to make the postseason, especially in Rob Manfred's 86 wins gets you in type of postseason bracket. You know what I mean? And you look at the $50 million that you mentioned there, and to me, you're right. It is the perfect segue, but I will kind of disagree with the figure that you put out there. I agree the $50 million, but that $50 million is what? It's the 12-15 million that you paid Yusei Kikuchi for being a good high level major league starter. Guess what? that 15 million is going to get you another Yusei Kikuchi parallel. You hope that's going to get you another, decent starter. And then obviously, you try to hit on the DH thing again, better than Justin Turner. You need a catcher next year. So it's like you're going through it, and it's like you allocate that money, it goes away real quick, and it's not as if you get materially better. I still feel like if they're going to make a big change in terms of flexibility, it's going to have to come with shedding some other contracts, not just the expirings. That's where the Kevin Gausman comes in, or the Chris Bassett comes in, or
it was more
maybe a Bo Bichette who gets traded in the offseason.
Right.
Maybe that, although
exactly.
I still don't think so.
Yeah.
But I think to me that's the major point, is that shedding salary. You mentioned the expirings. If they want to make a major dent and open up flexibility, that's got to come with moving a piece that has control beyond 2020, 2024. So I think that's the major point of the convo.
Yeah. My overall point, in the perfect way to simplify it before I leave, is you look at trading all expiring contracts as not enough at this deadline. Like that was the initial reaction, I think, from fans. But once you attach a dollar figure to it, I think people realize that it's actually a much more drastic change, a drastic move at the deadline than just simply getting rid of expiring contracts. It's actually cutting a lot of payroll.
That's fair.
All right, guys.
That's fair.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
Appreciate you, bud. Well, with Cole signing off for the rest of the show, Berto, let's get to what just happened today. And it's positive vibes, right? We've talked about Bo getting packed. We talked about miserable offseason stuff. The Jays just won a freaking series today. And now that, I know Cole had the show last week, but now you and I can talk about our experience in Seattle at T-Mobile Park, which was pretty damn cool. Thank you, Shane, for that. I didn't mention that to him, but he fired that in there. I love him for it. Anyways, So, Berto, I mean, look, T-Mobile Park, gorgeous. Jays fans, bananas. Your thoughts, pal?
My biggest takeaway is it just felt like a breath of fresh air. I mean, look, you're in the Blue Jays stratosphere here, living in the GTA. Obviously, you could feel just the tension and just the angst of this fan base that it's been pretty much really since. I mean, you can talk about even back into 2023, but especially since the offseason. And I think we mentioned on this program, you and I being there on opening day, and just the feeling of stress that existed in that ballpark, booing of John Schneider and the fans just being upset at a simple error when they were up big late in the game. Blue Jays fans have just been so miserable and so out of it when it comes to this team. And going out to the West Coast, seeing the fans that this is their only chance to watch the Blue Jays. They're grateful for any moment they get, any little moment they'll cheer for. You have the Let's Go Blue Jays chance in an opposing ballpark. The experience, even with the Jays being so poor and the Mariners being a first place team, albeit very flawed, fact that the Blue Jays fans still showed out and outnumbered those Mariners fans, it's just a special setting. I mean, it completely lived up to the hype of being in Seattle with the Blue Jays fans just flooding that stadium. It was just an awesome experience. And I think the moment specifically that I'm referring to with these comments is after Mitch Garver hit that home run to put it up 4-1, you and I both looked at each other and like, yeah, that's game. This is the 2024 Blue Jays. They're not coming back. We can already start planning dinner reservations and when we're going to leave. Might as well just leave now because this game's over. And yet Blue Jays fans, when they were down 4-1, they were still chanting the Let's Go Blue Jays. They were still clapping. They had hope. I mean, it's almost as if, you're worried, like, is this the same team you guys watch? And it is. You know that there are a lot of Blue Jays fans out in BC, out on the West Coast, and yet they still cheered for their team. It was a breath of fresh air to be around people who actually had positive vibes and believed in this team, albeit still obviously not a great team, but just very nice to see, positive fans and people who really support the team, even though the times are rough right now. So I found that really impressive.
Yeah, it was a breath of fresh air, I think is the way I like to put it. It really was. I mean, you mentioned the stress and angst we have every day living in the GTA watching these teams. I don't know if the GTA thing is just Blue Jays related, or if it's just Leaf fans hating life and Raptor fans being like, okay, what are we doing now? Are we any good anymore? Or are we just going to go into the abyss for a while? And then the Blue Jays are like, oh God, we see the abyss coming. Like, let's just get angry all the time. Meanwhile, like you mentioned, they're out west. They don't get to see these Blue Jays very often, Winterfest and stuff like that. But that's really about it. And so when they get the opportunity to drive, 3 hours, 2.5 hours from Vancouver to go see this team play for 3 games and cheer them on as loud as they can, it's awesome. And it was like you mentioned, it was a really different atmosphere. And hell, I mean, they treated us to some damn good ball games. Game 1 was kind of 3 hits and it was kind of painful, but we had that crazy moment. Yeah, Rob, we had that crazy moment where we were literally watching the Canada PKs in the CONCACAF thing. Wow, you can tell I don't watch much
The
soccer.
Copa America. Let me
Copa
help you
America.
there.
I knew I butchered that one hard. But yeah, we were watching that on your phone and watched Canada win in penalties, and literally right. I mean, what we 5 seconds, maybe
2 seconds, maybe like 3. Yeah, a
right
few
as they
seconds.
score to win it. Kevin Kiermaier goes deep, and it's like the only
That was
positive
awesome.
thing that happens in that game. And then we
No,
saw
that night was rough. The game was rough, but those 5-10 seconds, whatever it was, of just
it's crazy.
elation was
Yeah.
it was incredible.
Yeah, and the other two games, I mean, the way they won them, well, more in particular, the last one, just remarkable. And as you mentioned, the positive Jays fans, even though they were down, Springer's 3-run shot, Henderson Cabrera getting jacked up, your guy Dalton Varsho getting the game-winning hit, like the vibes were immaculate in Seattle. And you got to give the shout out to those fans, man. As painful as this team is to watch this year, they showed up. And we showed up as well, but only when they were doing good, because we're miserable. But it's fine. It's fine. So, it was a great time, and
Anyway,
hopefully we do that again. But yeah,
absolutely.
so they won that series.
Yep.
And then they go on to San Francisco as she didn't drive down the I-5, but she flew basically down the I-5 to San Francisco to see the Giants, and the Jays they won another series, back-to-back series dubs for the Toronto Blue Jays. They won 4 of their last 6. They won the last 2 games. They've won 2 in a row. The Buffalo Boys. I mean, you haven't seen much from Vlad in this series. Bo has been not on the field, so there's been that.
Bo.
And even George Springer, like he had a couple doubles yesterday, but he went 1 for today. But you're watching guys like Leo Jimenez doing a great job. He had the RBI single today, and Spencer Horowitz. I mean, what else can we say? Like, dude has been incredible. Went deep off of Jordan Hicks today, which chef's kiss. And has the same amount of home runs as Bo Bichette. So I just leave that there.
That's crazy to say.
It's nuts.
I mean, I told you, like, how crazy it will be when Leo Jimenez has as many home runs as Bo Bichette on this season. That'll be something. I think my biggest takeaway is your two starting pitching trade targets. Both were awesome. I mean, you obviously Yusei Kikuchi was electric, 13 strikeouts, career high on Tuesday. Tuesday, right? Yes, because today's Thursday. It was on Tuesday. To me, honestly, it's gotten to the point where watching Yusei Kikuchi dominate the way he did and having a second straight very good start. I mean, to me, that was more important than the win. Like, after they got walked off, to me, that was the perfect silver lining. And obviously, we'll talk about Kikuchi and trading later, because that's going to be the whole theme of July podcast in this program, because it's just the most important thing going on. But now all of a sudden, John Morosi was on the Fan 590 the next day saying that he expects the Jays to get a top 100 prospect for Kikuchi, which, I mean, to me is just it's crazy to think how that contract has aged. Going from unplayable. You just eat out the contract and then let it go after that first season to now being a very legitimate trade target and getting back a top 100 prospect. I mean, you got to give the front office their credit when it's due. So that one looks pretty good. And Kevin Gausman, I mean, I mentioned before how this might be the best chance to trade Kevin Gausman while his value is he's still got some value, 2.5 years. And we were there in Seattle, 10 strikeout game there, not quite as much, but 7 innings, 2 runs against the Giants after that first inning home run. He really settled in and gave them 6 strong after that. So I think, to me, that's a major takeaway. The wins at this point in terms of their record and postseason positioning, it's done. We all know the Blue Jays, they have to go 11-4, which is an insane winning percentage. It's like more than 2 out of 3 for the rest of the way until the trade deadline, just to be 500. And right now they're obviously 8.5 back. That's done. Despite the series wins, we're not changing our position. We still think this team should absolutely sell. And I think that both Yusei Kikuchi and Kevin Gausman, to me, trading them, I think that would be very valuable. I think that's something that needs to happen. We can talk about that more later, I should say. But the fact that both of them had good starts, back-to-back good starts, to me, that's my major takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at it that way. Like, you can look at it wins wise and just good vibes and maybe win 2 in a row. Instantly, people are like, are we back? It's like, no, stop. It's been done. Okay, it has been done.
Too, that Tuesday game was a perfect example of why this team is not back. It's a perfect example of why they'll never be able to go on a run consistently. Is because you look at what they have in that bullpen, and credit to them. Last 2 games they held it down, but even yesterday, I mean, after they were up 6 runs, there were a couple tense moments in that game. Obviously, Brendan Little loading the base, and then Bowden Francis serving up meatballs in the 9th inning. You have to get Chad Green up, warming up late in that game, despite being up multiple runs pretty much the entire second half of that ball game. I mean, there's just no way this team will ever, one, score enough runs to be up enough to go on a consistent run, and obviously the bullpen won't be able to hold it down. So yeah, that's the big reason why these wins are not anything redeemable in terms of this season, but more so good to see the guys who may have value in terms of the trade market and guys who may have value in terms of being on this team beyond the Spencer Horwitz. Vladdy, you mentioned, was quiet, but he's a guy that you look to have a good season to be a building block moving forward. I think that's what you got to look at more than the actual wins itself.
Yeah, you definitely do. And Kevin Gausman today was very fastball heavy. That's why he only had the 3 punch outs. Didn't throw as many splitters as he usually does. I don't know if that was a thing that he had a plan going into it, but obviously the team knows him very well since it was his former ball club. But he was great. I thought, in the early parts of the game, the fastball command wasn't there because there was one instance in particular, again, didn't hurt him at all, but Danny Jansen set up on the high and away corner and the fastball ends up down and away. And I'm like, okay, like you miss an okay spot, but it's just kind of all over the place. And he did find it as the start went along, hence, 6 straight shutout innings after the first. He was great. And trade value wise, again, I don't know how true it is about the whole trading at the deadline. Is Ross able to trade guys with term or beyond 2024? We'll see. But yeah, and for Yukio Kikuchi, obviously, that was one of his best starts as a Blue Jay, and couldn't have done it at a better time. He really couldn't have.
Career high in strikeouts.
Yeah, 13 punch outs. I mean, he was all over the place. I think he allowed 2 solo home runs, but that was it. But you mentioned the bullpen as well and why this team can't go on a run. Trevor Richards had to close a game for you.
Yeah.
Trevor Richards had to close out a 1-run ball game on the road. Like, and again, he wasn't terrible. Like a little infield single that, had absolute eyes.
Yeah.
And if you watch the wild pitch, it hits the corner of the plate and kicks wide of Jansen. He was in front of him, but because it hit the plate, it goes way off him. So horrible luck. As Rob, I think I said it in my video. I'm like, the Jays used all their pixie dust in Seattle. They ran out going to San Fran. But yeah, it was pretty painful to watch. And watching like Zach pop today in a 3-run game, I'm like, okay, here we go. And he did fine, but can you do it consistently? Probably not. And there's no reinforcements on the way. Eric Swanson, I think.
Jimmy Garcia. I mean,
that's one guy,
yeah.
Right? Obviously, Jordan Romano is a long ways away. Eric Swanson's a pumpkin in AAA. I looked at his numbers. Like, obviously, I think he's gotten hurt.
Yeah, I believe he's hurt again now, isn't he?
Yeah, but you look at the numbers from it. I mean, not only is it 11 ERA, dude's allowed like 24 hits in like 11 innings or something. Like, it's just 7 home runs in 14 innings, dude. That's crazy insane. Talk.
That's insane.
So in AAA, so it's like, yeah, there's no other than Jimmy Garcia, which again he got pushed back from in his rehab. So we don't know, like other than Jimmy Garcia, which again, coming off a rehab, which Jimmy Garcia are you gonna get? We don't know that yet. And regardless of that, he's all you got. That's it. So that's why this team is not, I wouldn't say serious, but they're not a winning ball club. They'll go on and win a couple series in a row. Sure, they'll win 3 in a row, which they haven't done since May. And so they're just not good. Enjoy the wins when they come. Sure, do it.
Yeah.
But
no, just tie a bow. Just tie a bow on. Yeah,
you can't get over.
Just tie a bow on all it. They have to play at a 90-win pace to be a 500 team.
Yeah,
I mean that's just not gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen. But enjoy the wins when they come. They've won 2 in a row. They've been entertaining. It's been fun seeing the Buffalo boys get it done. Now, speaking of Buffalo boys, and there are dudes down in Buffalo that are raking. 2 dudes that you've probably never heard of. And we'll get into it right now on the farm. All right, Berto, let's get right to these guys. I know you guys have been down in Buffalo. I don't know if you had a chance to see these dudes play at all when you were down there.
No, Cancelo just came up.
Okay, well, there we go. Riley Tirada, 25-year-old kid. The third baseman, again, not in the top 30 prospects. He was 25 in AA this year and nothing special, right? Well, his numbers down in AAA to this point. I mean, he's played 33 games, 116 at-bats, right? I mean, which is it's a sizable amount. He's sitting here, hitting 284 with a 411 on base and a 989 OPS. Yep. So, holy crap. But you look at his, what has he done down in AA this year? Well, is it just a kind of a spark thing? Well, in the 18 games he played at AA, he had a 902 OPS. So there's that. And, he had a 970 OPS. Oh, that's all of this year. He's just been raking this season. Again, these are guys that if you do make moves and you trade guys away, like a Justin Turner, Kevin Kiermaier, any position players, these are the dudes that 27 years old, 25 years old, get a little hot. I mean, here you go, bud. Here's your opportunity. Take it for what it is. So he's been awesome. And the guy that's just been taking AAA by storm, Gabriel Cancel. I mean, where in the hell did this? He's 27 years old. He has been. I'm not going to sure. He's been no good his entire career. He has 1 year in the minor leagues. Ran over 800 OPS. His next highest was 790 in 2017.
That's
and
crazy.
He's sitting there right now. Again, only 11 games. Very, very small sample size. 43 at bats. But he's sitting here with 6 bombs in 43 at bats. 11 RBIs. He's walked 8 times. He's batting almost 400 with almost a 500 OBP and almost a 1400 OPS. Berto, I mean, I know you've been keeping on, especially Cancel as well. What do you think here? Do you think he gets a shot?
I mean, at this point, like the trade deadline is coming, and I think you mentioned that last point: the Justin Turners, the Kevin Kiermaiers, maybe a Danny Jansen. Although I still don't think of that one. But my point is, and we saw a little bit this year, there's going to be plenty of at bats, plenty of opportunities for guys in Buffalo. When a team is selling, the last 2 months of the season is basically an extended spring training. It's basically an open tryout for who has a shot in 2025. And obviously, with these guys, the numbers that they're putting up, I mean, you mentioned this team needing bombs, and and we mentioned Aurelvis Martinez, how unfortunate it was that he won't be a part of this last 2 months and opportunities to showcase his skill because he has legit pop. Well, maybe Gabriel Cancel is one of the guys who might benefit from it. Maybe he's the guy who's going to get a look now that he wouldn't have gotten had Aurelvis Martinez been here. Let's be honest, like, had he not been suspended. And obviously, 27 years old, 43 plate appearances, like the sample size very much against Gabriel Cancel and his chance of ever being anything at the major league level. Great for him for putting his name on the map. And at this point, the fact that we're having a conversation, him getting a shot at the big leagues, that's great on him. He's obviously going to have to keep it up. The idea that he's going to be, contributing to this team in any high degree level, I still, would bet against it. But who knows? Like I said, there'll be an open tryout. If he gets a shot, hey, there you go. You got your foot in the door. Let's see what you do with it.
Yeah, and also on the Riley Toronto stuff, in 33 games, the reason the OPS is so high, he had 9 bombs. So the long ball, like obviously we mentioned, Cancel has 6 bombs in his 43 at bats. Well, in the 33 games that Riley Toronto's played, he's got 9. So there's been a lot of extra base pop in those guys. 7 doubles as well for Toronto. He's been great. He's been outstanding for them. So enough of that from the Buffalo boys, but it seems like another wave of, I guess, older Buffalo boys. I don't know. Now to the actual top 30 prospects. Yeah. Well, we're going off of the herd right now. We're going down even farther. Well, I guess one's at the herd. Let's go to the trending down guys, because Ricky Tiedemann and Adam Macko, literally like moments apart. Keegan Matheson tweets out some crazy stuff. And I have the tweets here, and I'm going to pull up the times that he tweeted these things out. So we'll start with the first one that he did, which was number 9 prospect Adam Macko felt some left forearm soreness. Great. Forearm. The lefty, you gotta love it. Great. After his last AA outing and is currently rehabbing it, the club said, here. Yeah. Oh, anything forearm related? Nope. Yeah. And that was at 8:48 p.m. Okay. Number 1 prospect Ricky Tiedemann left tonight's start in AAA with left forearm tightness. Lovely. Another blow to Tiedemann, who just can't seem to get back to normal or settle into any sort of routine. You know when that was tweeted? 4 minutes after.
That's crazy.
And that was the same day that Bo Bichette has his, I don't want to do this, calf injury. And Dalton left the game with his slide into first base. So 4 dudes went down in one freaking night. It was nuts.
My takeaway from this is, at this point, you cannot mess this deadline up. At this point, you just can't, because this farm system, they came into the league they came into the year paper thin. I mean, they were just about every major prospect rankings, bottom third. I mean, just about everything had them, 24, 26, 27th. I mean, whether it's, Baseball Prospectus, Baseball America, Fangraphs, whatever, prospect analytics tool you want to use, they all said the Blue Jays farm system ain't all that great. And that was before you had a year of, Ricky Tiedemann, your number one prospect, seemingly not being able to throw a pitch without feeling something in his arm. Unfortunately for him, I'm not sure how that's going to progress. It just seems like dude just feels like a band-aid at this point. Let's be honest with ourselves. A lot of very talented. I got a great guy. I got to talk to him earlier in the year, but yeah, that's it's been rough to see how he's progressed in terms of staying on the field. And another guy can't stay on the field for other reasons. Elvis Martinez, your best offensive prospect, your best position player prospects. We all know the story there. So coming to the year, the only two guys who teams would pick up the phone to talk to you about. The Blue Jays, if a player became available and the Blue Jays picked up the phone, if Elvis Martinez and Ricky Tiedemann's name weren't mentioned, that other team wasn't going to last very long on that phone. So both of those guys having the years they've had in terms of not playing and the farm system in its own not being good to begin with. I mean, at this point, you have to replenish that farm system somehow. Yusei Kikuchi, Kevin Gosman, while he still has value. I mean, all the expirings, I'm not sure how much value would Justin Turner or Kevin Kiermaier would have, or, a Chris Bassett, Danny Jansen, all those guys. But at this point, obviously, Yimi Garcia, you have to find a way to make some reasonable acquisitions this trade deadline. The Blue Jays being the position that they are in, with how high their payroll is, they can't afford to miss opportunities considering their division. Both the Yankees, who have been awful, by the way, which is great to see, and the Orioles, who are a wagon. We all know that. I mean, they can't afford to not capitalize here. You have some nice pieces. Obviously, no one's expecting a Juan Soto-like haul, but you got to get something. This farm system needs to be replenished. It needs to be better, and this is going to be a great opportunity to do so. You're sellers for the first time in half a decade. The farm system, for the first time, you have to look to replenishing the cupboards. The last 5 years you've been talking about how can you get better on the major league roster? Can we sacrifice a little bit? And they did that. And all of a sudden you're on the other side of the coin. You have to find a way to get some better names. So these are on the farm segments for you are better, but also that they're just their future outlook looks better.
But I can't wait. Honestly, on the farm is going to be vibing for multiple reasons.
Let's
One,
hope.
trade deadline. Two, draft in 3 days. Oh, it's going to be
Hugwatch. Hugwatch.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and I wanted to keep going with the Ricky Tiedemann stuff because I wanted to bring up these numbers. In his career, minor league career, which is 3 seasons, 140 innings. And you go off of his last 2 seasons combined, 61 and a third innings pitched. Like, you just, like you mentioned, Band-Aid. And you mentioned the prospects and how the organization is just very low. These are their top 5 prospects right now. Ricky Tiedemann, who Band-Aid. Elvis Martinez, done for the season, pretty much. 4th, Brandon Barriera, Tommy John. He's done until at least the middle of next season, and he's a Band-Aid as well. And Leo Jimenez is 5, and he's already at the big league level. Like, those are your top 5. Obviously, we're going to get into Arjun Namel in a second here. So he's your 3rd best prospect. Then 6 is Addison Barger. And how do you feel about him, right? He's great AAA numbers, but the big leagues and the minimal sample size is not very good. So that's your 6th best prospect. Like, this is where we're at, how bad this farm system really, really is. Yep. So we can keep being negative, but I'm going to try and grasp at a few positives. And I have, 3? Yeah, 3. All right, Arjun Namel. As I mentioned, we've talked about him ad nauseum this season. Development list after the really slow start. And he came back and he started to hit well. Well, he has continued to hit well. Over his last 10 games, he's hitting .310 with a .452 on base and a .672 slug. Now, it's minimal games, but his OPS is now over .730 in A-ball, and he's only 18 years old, and he's a really young dude. So there's a very positive sign there moving forward for him. Thank God this organization needs some sort of positive down there in the minor leagues. And the other 2 I got are pitchers. One guy I have not mentioned at all this season. He was a guy I kept a close eye on last year, and Kendry Rojas, who is your 10th best prospect. Now, he started the year in Vancouver, pitched a couple games, then was done. He got hurt. He was done for a couple months? Yeah. Then he came back and pitched the Florida Coast League game in June 25th. Then he pitched 1 game in Dunedin, and he got his first start back in Vancouver on July 9th. And he went 3 2/3, allowed 4 hits, walked 3, but struck out 6 guys over 3 2/3. He's a lefty. He's your 10th best prospect. So that's a positive sign moving forward. He was really good the last couple of years. Where is his last year? 2023 in Dunedin, he pitched 84 innings, an ERA of 3.75. He has never had an ERA above 4 in the minor leagues. So it's a positive sign moving forward for him. And by the way, he is only 21 years old and advanced A ball. And if he can, I mean, it's a dude that's, at advanced A at 21, pitching like that, it's a positive sign. So the other guy that I harped on last week or last time we were on, at least, was Fernando Perez, the 23rd ranked prospect in the Jays org, the 20-year-old kid in A ball. And I was super jacked up about him. Just I got this weird gut feeling about him. Right-handed pitcher. His last outing went five innings, allowed 2 hits, 1 run, walked 1, and struck out 5. His ERA is down to like 3.40. They're in A ball, and he's again only 20 years old, first professional season. And if you combine his last 2 starts, he's gone 10 innings of 5 hits, 2 runs, walked 1 guy over 2 starts, and struck out 10. So he has been really good in his last couple outings, and he is a guy that I don't know if you'd see go to Vancouver. Or you just let him ride out the season, but. A positive sign there for a couple arms in the Jays organization. And you and I have talked about it ad nauseum, how the Jays developing pitchers has been a disaster. And we're seeing it again with Adam Macko and Ricky Tiedemann and Brandon Barriera. It's just not working. Is it bad luck? I don't know. But those 2 guys are at least positive signs down there in very low in the minor leagues.
Yeah, be a while before we see them anywhere close to the big leagues. Yeah.
Big time. But hey, you and I were in Vancouver, and that place is a pretty damn nice place.
Yeah, not bad. What's the park called there again?
I
can't remember what it's called.
Anyway, regardless, it was jammed on a Wednesday night.
Very nice park for a high A baseball game. Yeah, very cool.
Vancouver loves their sports. It's beautiful. Anyways,
I will say though, from my limited experience, minor league baseball, I mean, it's I'll tell you what, it's not bad. It's a bit of a vibe. You have the old school ballparks. It kind of reminds you of going to your local ball field as a kid.
Yeah.
Like kind of like the way the field is positioned. I mean, it's small. There's no outfield. You just hit it over the fence and it'll roll till tomorrow. Yeah, no, it's definitely a cool vibe there. Seeing the Vancouver Canadians. Who they play again? Everett. I can't remember their team. Aqua Sox. The Aqua Sox. There we go. Yes, the Mariners team. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also got to see our 25th ranked prospect, Hassan Brown, play. He was an offer, but great to see him leading off there. And we got to see Jace Borofen, who went deep. He hit a bomb in that game.
Right field.
It's a good sign, maybe. I don't know. This organization stinks for prospects. But Rob, we'll quickly, I know we were already running low-ish on time, but let's be honest, how much can we talk about this next series? The last series before the All-Star break, before we all get a break, because I think we all need it. As you head to Arizona to take on the Diamondbacks, and look, we get to see some old faces in Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Gabriel Moreno, and the pitching matchups go as so. Yariel Rodriguez goes tomorrow against Ryan Nelson. That's a 9:40 first pitch. More late games for everybody. And then Saturday, 10:10 first pitch. Jose Barrios versus Yilber Diaz. I don't know. He's pitched 6 innings in the big leagues this season. Which is scary. He's 23 from Venezuela.
Doing 7 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 9 Ks.
There you go, buddy. There you go. It's a sack fly or something. And then the finale of the series is going to be a very fun one to watch. Yusei Kikuchi versus Zach Gallen. So that's going to be a doozy in the finale. So, Rob, what are you looking forward to seeing in the series? Because, like we said, wins don't really matter. So, what are we looking for in this series? For me personally, it's Yariel Rodriguez, seeing if he can do it again. And I guess the Buffalo Boys still.
Yeah, well, Yariel Rodriguez, and I would say just in general, one thing that's been a treat about this 2024 season is that the starting pitching has just been up to par. I mean, for the most part, Kevin Gausman has had a bit of a struggles. Jose Barrios specifically has been struggling as of late. But overall, the starting rotation has pretty much held their own in terms of being one of the better rotations in all of baseball when you look at the guys. And obviously, Yariel came up a little bit late. He only has 7 career starts, but back-to-back terrific outings. You mentioned that's going to be a fun watch to see him go to the mound. Can he be 3 straight starts in a row against the D-backs? And obviously, Yusei Kikuchi, we talked about him being a trade piece and how important he is to pitch well for his value. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one on Sunday. If he can go out there and have a great start, 3 consecutive before the All-Star break, I think that'll be very good, very positive vibes. In terms of the overall wins and losses, like I said, it doesn't really matter. It's more so the redeemable parts of this team, how they perform. How can Vlad perform? Can he get back on track and make a serious bid for that contract? And the Buffalo Boys continue to keep performing. Can the pitching staff continue to be good? And who knows? We might see Jimmy Garcia back. I mean, I'm not sure how his outing went today in Buffalo. I know that he got pushed back from yesterday with a stiff neck, but I heard from Keegan that if all signs go well, that he might join the team in Arizona. So if he's up, I mean, that's another trade candidate that can go out there. And if he continues to look as good as he did before his injury, all of a sudden now that's another legitimate bullpen trade piece. So I'm looking at the redeemable parts of this team more so than the actual results. And also, Chase Field in Arizona, I can't remember the last time we were there. I want to say it was in 16. I'm not sure we've been there since. So it's been a long time since I've watched a ball game with the Blue Jays at Chase Field. So that's going to be cool.
Yeah, it definitely is. And for me, I'm just dialed into Yariel, man. Dude's gotten 12 innings of 3-hit ball
Awesome
in his last 2 starts. In Seattle, he was dominant, man. 1 hit over 6 innings. He was magnificent in his outing. I don't think there's much else to say, Berto. You and I have talked about.
Oh, one more thing. For those of you who missed it, Kevin Kiermaier was been placed on revocable waivers, still playing in today's game. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because I feel it just seems awkward as hell to me.
It feels pretty standard. I mean, the Blue Jays have done this before with Josh
that.
Donaldson and Jose Bautista,
No,
and teams do it all the time.
I know. It just seems like if I was a player, it would be awkward as hell for me because then I'm unrevocable. Okay, I got to go out and play for you guys, and okay. And he had 2 hits today, made an incredible play. So.
Yeah, I mean, not that those are correlated, but I will say, I mean, for Kevin Kiermaier, he's a veteran. I'm sure he understands the writing on the wall.
Oh, sure.
1-year deal. He's a guy who's in his 30s on a team that is struggling, is not going to be in the playoffs. They know they're not going to be in the playoffs. They're going to want to see their young guys. I feel like at this point, even for Kevin Kiermaier himself, I mean, with the way this year has gone, I'm sure, he's a guy who's endeared himself to the Blue Jays fan base despite being so many years on the opposite end with the Rays. Being a part of those just annoying Rays teams, he was at the forefront of them. And I'm sure he loves playing in Toronto, loves living in Toronto. But I think even him at this point, considering how he's had the season and considering how the team is, I think a change of scenery for both sides would be good. So I feel like he understands. I feel like he's a pro enough to understand how it works.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, it's bound to happen. Wouldn't be surprised if they make a deal with the Rays at some point, just because that seems like
I advocated for that earlier this season, so I think that would be a cool landing spot for him.
It would be a cool landing spot. All right, Berto. Well, let's wrap this thing up, buddy. It's been a blast as always. We talk about miserable stuff. We talk about a couple of positive things, and then we end it up. It just seems to be the way it goes for the 2024 Toronto Blue Jays. For myself, James Price, Robin Tillemont, and Cole Whiston, thank you so much for listening and watching. And for Shane behind the scenes, buddy, appreciate you as always.
Go.
Talk to you guys soon.
MVP.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Blue Jays Center on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.